So one of my favorite artists of all time is Dale Chihuly. And if you have never heard of him before, you are really missing out on a fabulous artist. His website is really good for reference for photos and information, and I have found lots of resources there over the years. You might call me a Chihuly junkie because I have traveled the country and seen several of his exhibits throughout botanical gardens and museums. And the thing I love most about his artwork is just he always comes up with something new. Even after being an artist for decades and doing both indoor and outdoor installations, there's always something unexpected in his work that surprises me. There's always something I haven't seen or something in a way I haven't seen it. And I think that's really one of the reasons that I'm drawn to Chihuly. The other reason is the bright use of colors that he has. He just has this fun sense of play with whatever he is working on, whether it be an indoor millefiore or an outdoor installation. There is just a sense of play and fun with his use of colors and his use of shapes and his use of space. I started trying to figure out different kinds of projects that were inspired by his art way back in college. And through the years, I've tried different things for students to take home. Plus, as kind of a stained glass window effect, we have taken Sharpie markers colored on clear plastic cups and then melted those. And so they transform their shape into something more like what you would see in his art rather than just a plastic cup. It has a really beautiful effect, but what we quickly learned is in sun, it fades out pretty quickly. And so within a year, they were looking a little shabby. And so another idea that I found online was taking plastic bottles and transforming them into a chandelier. They could also be a tower or a sculpture that sat on a table or on the floor. So our commons area or cafeteria area has these great exposed rafters. And so it's really easy to just throw a chain over them and hang up these sculptures. They look like they would weigh a lot, but they really don't. I wouldn't say any of them really weigh maybe more than 15 pounds. It just kind of depends on its size. And so over the years, we've made a new one every year. I would like to add another one so I have a way to keep track of the years that I've taught and have one for every year up there. But basically, they're really easy to do, and I'm going to show you how we did it with my kids and I in action, making our latest one that will go up sometime later this spring. All right, so I would say probably the most time-consuming part of this whole project is collecting enough bottles. Typically, my sculptures with the frames that I use run about 500 bottles per sculpture. And I've learned a lot over the years of which bottles to use and which not to use. You can use any bottles that you want. Your hands just may get really tired cutting. And so I prefer the plastic water bottles that are the cheapest you can find. And when you squeeze them, they make a nice crinkle sound. And so once you've collected the bottles and taken off the lids and the labels and they're plain and ready to go, then the kids' first step is to paint. Over the years, I have used a couple different kinds of paints. One is apple barrel acrylics. They kind of would be expensive for this project if you use them solely, but they work really well, and they come in a variety of colors. The other paint that I use is leftover paints, latex paints that you paint your house with. If you get donations, then they're free, and that is wonderful. Sometimes businesses have sales on, sample quarts or something, and you can pick things up really cheap that way, or even they make the wrong mix, and you can find colors that way. The hardest thing with donations is you get a lot of beige and a lot of taupes, and so it's keeping those eyes open for those unusual bright colors that would make a fantastic sculpture. And they absolutely love this step. In the past, I have done several different colors at one time on the table, and they could kind of mix it up and do whatever colors they wanted or designs. It made kind of a big mess when drying because it would kind of puddle. And so this year I limited them to just one color, and I called it the color of the day. And it didn't seem any less exciting than my students when they did it last year. So that's probably what I'll be doing in the future. Then once they are painted, then the students put them over on these contraptions that my custodian and I built that allow them to dry. I used to just set them on a tray, and that worked. but with the running of the paint, the bottles tended to stick. And so this contraption allows them to dry upside down, where none of their surface actually touches anything. It's over a dowel rod, and so it's completely surrounded by air, and the drying time quickens by a lot. And so they're able to dry usually typically by the end of the day. So then once they're dry, I bag them up and I take them to the next station, which is cutting the bottles and then tying the strings onto them. I've done this several different ways. Look like a round globe. It was cut where you cut just straight from the bottom of the bottle to the top of the bottle after you cut the bottom off. The ones we're doing this year and what you see is where they cut the bottom off and then they cut around the bottle, and it creates this stretched out ribbon-like effect. Either way works, it just has a different shape and a different look. And so I've been trying to rotate the different techniques so that way there's some different interest out there and a different look every year when I do the bottles, that it's not always the same kind of effect. Once the bottles are cut and ready to go, then the last step is to tie the string on and then tie it onto the frame. And for the frame, I use a tomato cage tied with wire. But as I said before, I had that one that was a globe. I put a fitness ball in surrounded by a hula hoop so it would have some strength to hang by, and then cover that with tomato cage. So that way when it was covered, or not tomato cage, chicken wire. And so that way when it was covered over, the mesh wouldn't collapse on itself. That the fitness ball inside would support it. It got to be really big, and I think the next time I do it, I could go to a smaller one because that one took over 1,000 bottles to do. Another technique I used one year was I took my tree stand and I wrapped it in chicken wire and used that as the support. Removed the Christmas tree stand and had just the wire holding the bottles, and I hung that. And so that was the column-like sculpture that was also in the comments in the video. And so there's lots of different ways to do this, lots of different effects you can get, but with teamwork, it really goes quite fast. This sculpture is finishing up in maybe just a little around 2 weeks, which is unusual because usually we spend about a month on it, but my frame was a little smaller this year, and that might be part of the reason why. And so we work on it about 2 hours every day because of my two second grade classes for about 3 to 4 weeks. So that way you get an idea of how long it might take. Well, I think that's it for this episode of Art with Miss H. If you ever have any questions or comments about the videos, be sure to leave them in the comment boxes down below because I would love to hear your feedback. I hope you take the time to create one of these fabulous sculptures at your school too, because it is a great way to put your name out there and put your artwork out there of your students in your district to show off what's going on inside your classroom. Don't forget, I've got new videos every Monday, so check back again next week, or to make it a little easier, just click to subscribe and YouTube will let you know when new videos are posted.